When the most famous basketball player in the world walked into a small tea shop on a rainy Tuesday in Chicago, nobody expected anything unusual to happen. Michael Jordan just wanted to be alone. He found his usual table, the quiet one by the window. He ordered plain black tea, no sugar. He sat down, wrapped both hands around his mug, and stared at the rain sliding down the glass. No cameras, no crowd, no one asking for autographs. Just a man and a cup of tea and the kind of silence he had been chasing for years. For a few minutes, everything was exactly the way he wanted it. Then the bell above the door rang. 3 little girls walked in. Identical faces, matching yellow raincoats soaking wet from the rain, scuffed sneakers, brown braids. They looked about 9 years old, and they stood in the doorway, dripping on the welcome mat, looking around the room with wide, calm eyes, like children who had already learned that the world does not always make space for you, so you have to find it yourself. The smallest one spotted Michael first. She grabbed her sister's hands. They huddled together, all 3 of them, whispering, looking at Michael, looking at each other, looking back at Michael. And then, as if they had voted and every single vote said yes, all 3 girls walked straight toward his table. Michael looked up. The tallest one leaned forward. She was close enough that he could see a small scratch on her chin. She cupped her hand around her mouth and spoke directly into his ear. 4 words. 4 words that Michael Jordan, the man who had won 6 championships, the man who had made entire arenas hold their breath, the man the whole world thought they knew, was completely unprepared for. She whispered, "Pretend you're our father." And here is the part that will stay with you long after this video ends. These 3 little girls had no idea who their mother really was. They had no idea that inside a closet in their grandmother's house sat an old basketball with a faded signature on the side. A signature that connected their family to Michael Jordan in a way that nobody alive fully understood yet. They had no idea that 30 years ago, their mother had done something so quietly brave, so completely without asking for anything in return, that it had changed the course of one man's entire life. And Michael Jordan had no idea either. Not yet. What happens next at that table, what those 3 girls say, what Michael discovers, and what their mother left behind in a sealed envelope that nobody had opened until now, is one of the most quietly beautiful stories you will ever hear. Watch the whole video, because the secret that connects all of them is coming, and when it arrives, you will not see it the same way twice. The tea shop was called Birchwood and Bloom. It sat between a dry cleaner and a used bookstore on a quiet street in Chicago, the kind of street that cars pass through without stopping. The sign above the door was hand-painted. The wood floors were old and a little uneven. It smelled like cardamom and warm milk and something close to peace. There were 9 tables inside. 8 of them were loud. A mother was cutting a muffin into 16 pieces for a toddler who wanted 0 of them. 2 teenage girls were sharing earbuds and laughing at something on a phone screen. An old man in a red hat was reading a newspaper so slowly it seemed like he was memorizing it. The espresso machine hissed. A chair scraped. Someone sneezed twice. The 9th table was completely silent. Michael Jordan sat alone. He was not wearing anything famous. No suit, no championship ring catching the light. He had on a gray sweater, soft from too many washes, and a pair of reading glasses he never let photographers see. His hands were wrapped around a white mug, both of them like he was holding something he didn't want to drop. He was looking out the window. The rain came down in long, slow lines against the glass. The street outside was the color of old pennies. A taxi moved through a puddle and sent a small wave across the sidewalk. Nobody on the sidewalk seemed to mind. Michael watched all of it without really seeing any of it. His tea was plain black, no sugar. It was getting cold. He came to Birchwood and Bloom on Tuesdays. He had been coming for 11 years, always to this table, always alone, always with the same order. The woman behind the counter, her name was Petra and she had worked there since before Michael ever walked in, always had his mug ready before he reached the register. She never made a fuss. That was why he kept coming back. It was the only place in the city where he felt like just a person. His father used to say that everyone needed one place like that, a place where the walls didn't know your name. His father had a barbershop he loved for that reason. He would go in on Saturday mornings and sit and talk about nothing, baseball, the weather, whether the city would ever fix the potholes on Maple. And for an hour, he was just James, not anyone's father or husband or deacon. Just James in a chair talking about potholes. His father had been gone for many years now. Michael looked at the chair across from him. It was empty. It was always empty. No one sat across from him at this table. Some people tried, fans who recognized him despite the glasses, a reporter once who had more courage than sense. But Michael had a way of looking at people that answered the question before they asked it. The chair stayed empty. He picked up his cold tea. He took a sip. He set it back down. Then the bell above the door rang. 3 girls walked in. They were identical, brown braids, yellow raincoats 2 sizes too big, dark at the shoulders where the rain had soaked through. Sneakers with the rubber peeling away at the toe. They looked about 9 years old. They stood in the doorway, dripping on the welcome mat, looking around the room with wide, steady eyes. Not nervous, just looking, the way people look when they are used to figuring things out on their own. The one on the left spotted Michael first. She grabbed her sister's hands. She whispered something. The 3 of them huddled, 3 identical faces tilting toward each other, 3 pairs of the same brown eyes flicking back and forth between Michael and each other. Then, as if they had voted and it was unanimous, all 3 walked straight toward his table. Michael looked up. The tallest girl leaned forward. She was close enough that he could see a small scratch on her chin, the kind that comes from a bicycle or a fall from something she had been told not to climb. She cupped her hand around her mouth and spoke directly into his ear. Her voice was low and careful. "Please, pretend you're our father, just for a little while. We'll explain everything. We just really need someone to think we're not alone right now." Michael Jordan set his mug down on the table. He looked at the 3 soaking wet girls standing in front of him. No parent behind them, no panic on their faces. Only a strange, quiet confidence. The kind that doesn't come from never being scared. It comes from being scared many times and learning that you can still stand up straight while it happens. He looked at the empty chair across from him. Then he reached out and pulled 2 more chairs from the nearest table. 3 chairs, 1 for each of them. "Sit down," he said. He did not say all of you. He didn't need to. All 3 of them sat. They arranged themselves with a kind of quiet order that surprised him. The tallest one took the middle chair. The one who had spotted him first, the one who had grabbed her sister's hands and whispered the plan, took the chair on the left. The third sister, the one who had not said a single word yet, took the chair on the right and immediately looked at Michael, the way a scientist looks at something new under a microscope. Michael looked back at all 3 of them. "Names," he said. The tall one in the middle spoke first. "I'm Odette." She said it the way someone says a word they have had to spell for teachers many times. "This is Wren," she pointed left. "And this is Sable." She pointed right. Wren gave a little wave with her whole hand. Sable did not move. She was still looking at Michael. "Okay," Michael said. "Where are your parents?" Odette folded her hands on the table. She had the posture of someone who had answered hard questions before and had decided the best way through them was straight. "Our mom passed away," she said. 6 months ago. Her name was Selene." The tea shop kept making its noises around them, the hiss of steam, the scrape of a chair, Petra humming something low behind the counter. But at this table, it was very still. Michael did not say, "I'm sorry," right away. He did not rush to fill the silence with something soft and useless. He let the words sit for a moment, the way they deserved to. Then he said, "What do you need right now?" Sable tilted her head a little, like a bird hearing a sound it didn't expect. Odette took a breath and explained. They lived with their grandmother, Dottie. Dottie was 68 and strong, but this morning her chest had felt strange and tight, so she walked to the clinic 2 blocks over. She did not want to bring the girls into a waiting room full of sick people. She had pointed across the street at Birchwood and Bloom, pressed $4 into Wren's hand, and said, "Get something warm and wait for me. Do not talk to strangers." Wren leaned forward here and added, completely seriously, "You're not really a stranger, though. Everyone knows who you are." Michael almost smiled. Sable spoke then, for the first time. Her voice was lower than her sister's, slower, like each word had been considered before it was released. "The man at the counter kept looking at us," she said, "like he was waiting for a reason to ask us to leave. Kids without a grown-up make some people nervous." Michael glanced over his shoulder. The young man behind the counter, maybe 22, a little jumpy, was watching their table. When Michael's eyes found his, he quickly looked down and began wiping the espresso machine with great focus. Michael turned back. He straightened in his chair, squaring his shoulders the way he used to before a game. He picked up the small paper menu from the edge of the table and held it out toward Wren, since she seemed like the one most likely to have opinions. "What do you want to drink?" That was all it took. Wren took the menu and began reading it like it was a treasure map. Odette asked for hot chocolate with no marshmallows because she thought marshmallows were a waste of a good drink, a statement she delivered with complete conviction. Sable asked for plain hot water with a slice of lemon, which made Wren say, "That's not even a real drink," and made Odette say, "Yes, it is," and made Michael raise one hand, just slightly, and the argument stopped. They were surprised by that. Kids usually were. While Petra brought the order over, not making a fuss, just setting the cups down and moving on, the way Michael liked, the girls settled into their chairs. The yellow raincoats came off. Wren hung hers on the back of her chair and missed, and it fell on the floor, and she left it there. Odette folded hers across her lap precisely. Sable draped hers over her knees like a blanket. Michael watched all of this. Then Sable looked up and said, "Are you sad?" He blinked. "Why?" "When we came in, you were holding your cup with both hands." She paused. "Like it was the only thing in the room. My mom used to hold her coffee like that, when she was missing someone." The hum of the tea shop went somewhere far away. Michael did not look away from her. He did not smile to soften it or shake his head to dismiss it. He said, "Yeah, I guess I was a little sad." Sable nodded, the way someone nods when the answer they expected turns out to be the true one. Who had been measuring the moment with some internal instrument only she could read, reached across the table and put her small hand on top of Michael's. She said, "It's okay. We're sad too." She looked at him with eyes that had already seen more than 9-year-old eyes should have to see. But it helps to have company. Michael Jordan looked down at the small hand on top of his. Something behind his eyes shifted. Quietly, slowly, like a key turning in a lock that hadn't been opened in a very long time. Nobody moved for a moment. Then Wren took her hand back, picked up her hot chocolate, and said, "So what's it like being the most famous person in the world?" The way someone asks what's for lunch, like it was simply the next thing to know. Michael leaned back in his chair. "I'm not the most famous person in the world." Wren squinted. "You might be. There are presidents, musicians, people who... Okay, but if I drew a circle on a piece of paper and put a dot in the middle and said that dot is the most famous person alive, you'd be close to the dot." Odette said, without looking up from her notebook, "You'd be the dot, basically." Michael looked at Odette. "You carry a notebook everywhere?" She looked up. "I'm a marine biologist." "You're 9. I'm a marine biologist in training." She turned the notebook so he could see the page. A jellyfish carefully drawn in pencil, with every tentacle counted and labeled. Below it, in neat print, Chrysaora fuscescens, Pacific sea nettle, can grow up to 1 meter wide. Michael studied it for a moment. That's good. Odette accepted this the way she accepted most things, seriously, without false modesty. I know 17 species by memory. Do you want me to list them? Maybe not all 17. That's what everyone says. She closed the notebook, but gently. The hours stretched. That was the only way to describe what happened next. Time in the tea shop moved differently than it did outside. The rain kept coming. Petra refilled cups without being asked. The man at the counter stopped watching their table. And the four of them, a man the whole world knew, and 3 girls the world did not know yet, talked the way people talk when nobody is performing for anyone. Wren told a story. She made it up on the spot, which Michael only realized halfway through because it was too strange and too good to have been planned. It was about a giraffe who became a lighthouse keeper because he was tall enough to see ships coming before anyone else could. The giraffe was lonely at first because the lighthouse was on a rock in the middle of the ocean, and giraffes are not built for rocks or oceans. But ships started leaving him things at the base of the lighthouse as thank you gifts. A hat, a wind chime, a jar of buttons, a very small piano. And after a while, the rock felt like a place that knew him. The story ended with the giraffe playing the very small piano in the dark while the light turned overhead and the ships passed safely in the distance. Michael laughed. A real laugh, not a polite one, not the short one he used at charity dinners. The kind that starts somewhere low and comes up without permission. 2 people at nearby tables turned to look. Neither of them could hear what was funny, but the laugh itself made them smile, because that kind of laugh is contagious, even at a distance. Wren looked very pleased with herself. Sable said nothing. She had been watching Michael the whole time, not rudely, not strangely, just the way she watched everything, like she was reading something written in very small print. After a while she said, "Is basketball really as fun as it looks?" Michael considered this the way he considered things that deserved a real answer. Not immediately. He turned the question over first. "It was the most fun I ever had," he said. "And sometimes it was the loneliest thing I ever did." Wren frowned. How can something be both? "Because when you're really good at something," he said, "people stop seeing you. They just see the thing you're good at." The tea shop hummed. Odette looked up from her notebook. She had been drawing while he talked. She was always drawing, but she was listening. She said, "Like how people look at us and see triplets first, and then maybe us second, if they look long enough." Michael pointed at her. Exactly like that. Odette looked at the finger pointing at her, then at Michael, then back at her notebook. She wrote something at the bottom of the jellyfish page. She did not show him what it was. A few minutes passed. Wren had moved on to describing the bus ride to the tea shop in full detail. The man with the parrot, a woman whose hat blew off and landed on a stranger's dog, the way the windows fogged up so that Sable drew a small whale in the condensation that lasted 4 stops before it disappeared. Michael was listening, actually listening, not waiting for his turn to speak. Then something changed. It was small, the kind of thing most people would miss. A woman at the table beside them lifted her phone, slowly, casually, the way people do when they are trying to look like they are doing something else. The camera was pointed at their table. Michael noticed. He always noticed. His jaw tightened, just slightly. But Odette noticed him noticing. She said quietly, "Does it bother you? People taking pictures." He was quiet for a moment. "Sometimes I just want to be the guy at the table." Sable set down her lemon water. She looked at him with those steady, careful eyes. She said, "You are the guy at the table." Right now. A pause. We're the only ones who know it. Michael looked at her. Then he looked at the woman with the phone. Then he looked back at the three girls at his table. Odette with her notebook, Wren already halfway into a new thought, Sable watching him like he mattered in a way that had nothing to do with basketball. He picked up his tea. It had gone cold again. He drank it anyway. Then Wren stopped mid-sentence about the parrot and looked at Michael with sudden, direct curiosity. The way she looked when something had been sitting in the back of her mind and had finally decided to come forward. She said, "Did you know our mom?" The table went very still. Michael said, "I don't think so. Why?" Wren said, "She had this old basketball, really old. She kept it in her closet on the top shelf where we couldn't reach. She would never say where it came from." She paused. "It had a signature on it, but the ink was so faded you could barely read it anymore." Sable added, "She cried once looking at it. She thought we were asleep." The rain tapped the window. Someone across the room laughed at something on their phone. The espresso machine hissed. Michael asked, "What did the signature look like?" Odette was already opening her notebook. "I drew it," she said simply. "From memory. I stared at it for a long time when Mom wasn't looking." She found the page. She turned the notebook around and slid it across the table toward him. Michael looked down at the drawing, the shape of the letters, the particular way the J curved, the long, looping tail of the last stroke. He knew that signature. It was his own. From 1983, the year he was a frightened freshman at UNC who hadn't yet become anything the world would recognize. He had signed exactly 11 basketballs that year, a small charity drive, a table in a hallway, a box of markers and a stack of balls, and a long afternoon of nobody special becoming someone. He slid the notebook back across the table. His hand was not quite steady. He said nothing, but something behind his eyes had changed again, not like a key turning this time, like a door swinging slowly open onto a room he did not know was there. He was still looking at it, that invisible room, that impossible thing. When the bell above the door rang, everyone at the table looked up. Everyone except Michael. He needed one more second. Then he looked too. The woman who walked in was small, but she entered the way tall people do, like the room noticed her before she noticed the room. She had silver hair cut close to her head, neat and deliberate. Her earrings were small fish, silver ones, one in each ear, swimming in opposite directions. She wore a coat the color of autumn leaves, burnt orange with 2 wooden buttons, and she held an umbrella that had surrendered its shape to the wind sometime earlier and never fully recovered. In her other hand was a white paper bag from the clinic, folded once at the top. She stopped just inside the doorway. Her eyes moved across the tea shop the way a woman's eyes move when she is looking for 3 specific faces in a crowd. They found the yellow raincoats. They found the table. They found the man sitting across from her granddaughters. She went very still, not the still of shock, the still of someone who is deciding, in real time, exactly how to handle a situation nobody prepared her for. She chose dignity. She always chose dignity. She walked to the table with the careful, unhurried steps of a woman whose knees were tired but who would not let them show it. She stopped at the edge of the table. She looked at the girls first, a single long look that said everything a grandmother's look can say, which is considerable. And then she turned to Michael. She extended her hand. "Dottie Voss," she said. "I hope they weren't a bother." Michael stood. He shook her hand. "They were the best company I've had in a long time." Dottie looked at him the way she had looked at the tea shop, carefully, completely. She had the eyes of someone who had seen enough of the world to know the difference between a thing said to be polite and a thing said because it was true. She decided it was true. She sat down, not to rush the girls, not to make a scene, but because her knees were tired and the chair was there, and she was the kind of woman who sat down when she needed to and stood up when she was ready and did not apologize for either. Petra appeared with a fresh cup of tea without being asked. She set it in front of Dottie and disappeared again. Dottie wrapped both hands around it, and for one moment at that table, 3 out of 5 people were holding their cups the same way. None of them noticed. For a few minutes, the 5 of them existed together in the warm, steamed air of birchwood and bloom. A man the whole world knew, a grandmother who would not be impressed by that, and 3 girls in damp socks. And from the outside, from any other table in the shop, it looked exactly like a family on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. Wren told Dottie about the parrot man on the bus. Dottie listened with the patience of someone who had heard a great many Wren stories and had made peace with where they ended up. Odette showed Dottie the new jellyfish in her notebook. Dottie said, "Very nice, baby," and meant it. Sable leaned against Dottie's arm without saying anything. Dottie put her hand over Sable's without looking down. It was the gesture of people who had done this many times, in many hard moments, without needing to name what they were doing. Michael watched all of this. Then his eyes dropped to the table. Odette's notebook was still open, still on the same page. The drawing of the signature sat there between them, small and faded-looking even in pencil, the way memory makes things look when you've carried them a long time. Dottie's eyes moved to it. Something crossed her face, quick as a shadow crossing a wall when a cloud moves over the sun. There and gone. Michael caught it. He said gently, carefully, the way you approach something that might startle, "Did you know your daughter had a basketball with a signature like that one?" Dottie was quiet. She looked at the drawing. She took one slow breath. "Celine kept that ball for 30 years, she said. Wouldn't part with it. I asked her once, just once, where it came from." She paused. "She said a boy gave it to her, someone she knew at school. She was at Chapel Hill for 2 years before she had to come home." Another pause, longer this time. She never said more than that. Celine had a way of keeping her kindest things close. Chapel Hill. UNC. Michael did the math the way you do math that you already know the answer to and are hoping to be wrong. He was not wrong. He said nothing. He slid the notebook back toward Odette. His hand was steady this time. He made sure of it. Near the end of the visit, Dottie began the small, practiced movements of a woman preparing to gather children and leave. Coats collected, cups finished. The clinic bag transferred from the back of her chair to her arm. Wren slid off her chair and turned back to Michael. "You were really good at pretending," she said. Michael looked at her. "I wasn't pretending." Wren's smile broke open, gap-toothed, sudden, bright as a window flung wide on a dark room. She crossed back and wrapped both arms around him for exactly 3 seconds. Then she was gone, pushing through the chairs toward the door. Odette paused at the edge of the table. She gave him a small, formal wave, the wave of someone who takes arrivals and departures seriously. Then she followed her sister. Sable was last. She always was. She stood at the corner of the table and looked at Michael the way she had been looking at him all afternoon, reading the small print, finding the thing underneath the thing. Then she said, "My mom would have liked you." A pause. She always said the best people are the ones who know how to sit still. She turned and walked out after her grandmother. The bell rang. The door closed. Michael Jordan sat alone at the table again. 4 empty cups, 3 empty chairs. The rain still coming down the window in long, slow lines. He looked at the empty chair across from him. It felt different now. Not the same empty it had been 2 hours ago. Not the empty of something missing. The empty of something that had been here and was real and would come back. He picked up his cold tea. He held it with both hands. And 2,000 miles away, 30 years ago, a 19-year-old girl named Celine Voss was doing the same thing, holding something she didn't quite understand, in a room that didn't quite feel like home yet, wondering if the thing she was holding would still matter in the morning. Chapel Hill, North Carolina, October 1983. The Carmichael Arena held 10,000 people when it was full. On weekday evenings after practice had officially ended, and the coaches had gone home, and the other players had showered and left, it held one. Celine Voss had found the upper deck by accident in her second week at UNC. She had been looking for a quiet place to read, somewhere the dormitory noise couldn't reach her. And a door she thought was a supply closet had opened instead onto a bank of seats looking down over the whole arena, empty and cathedral still. She had sat down. She had stayed 2 hours. She had come back the next evening and the one after that. She liked it because nobody went there. She liked the way the overhead lights made everything look golden and far away. She liked that she could see the whole court from above, the way a bird sees a thing, the way you understand the shape of something when you are not standing inside it. She was not there for basketball. But there was always one player left on the court when she arrived. A freshman, number 23. She did not know his name for the first 3 weeks. She watched him the way she watched things she didn't understand, carefully, without expectation. What she noticed was not how good he was, though he was very good. What she noticed was what he did when he missed. He didn't curse. He didn't kick the ball. He didn't look around to see who had seen him fail. He simply stood still, completely still, both feet planted, ball in his hands, and looked at the hoop. Like he was asking it a question, like he was listening for an answer only the two of them could hear. Then he shot again, every time. One evening in late October, Celine arrived to find something on the floor beneath the bleachers near her usual seat. A piece of paper folded twice, the edges soft from being handled. She almost left it. Then she picked it up. She unfolded it. It was not addressed to anyone. It had no name at the top or the bottom. It was written in small, tight handwriting, the writing of someone used to keeping things contained. And it said, "I don't think I belong here. Everyone is waiting for me to be something. I don't know if I can be it. I'm so tired of pretending I'm not scared." That was all. Celine sat with the note in her lap for a long time. Below her, on the court, number 23 ran a free throw drill alone in the golden light. Miss, still, look, shoot, make, again. She folded the note back along its creases and put it in her jacket pocket. She carried it home. She set it on her desk. She went to class the next day and the day after that, and the note sat there, and she looked at it the way you look at something that is asking something of you that you haven't decided whether to give. On the third day, she got out a piece of paper. She didn't know who had written the note. She wasn't sure it mattered. She wrote what was true. She wrote that fear and greatness often sleep in the same bed. She wrote that belonging is something you build with your hands, day by day. You don't find it already standing. She wrote that she had watched someone in that gym shoot through his fear instead of walking away from it, and that whoever wrote this note was already doing the thing they were afraid they couldn't do. She did not sign her name. She folded the paper. She went to the arena that evening. She left it exactly where she had found the first one, under the bleachers near her usual seat. She climbed back up and watched the empty court for a while. Then she went home. 2 weeks later, she came in to find something sitting in her seat. Not a note this time, a basketball. Old even then, the leather worn soft at the seams. On the side, in black marker already beginning to fade at the edges, was a signature. Just a signature. No note, no explanation. No way of knowing if it was a thank you or a coincidence or something that lived in between those two things. She picked it up and held it with both hands. She carried it home on the bus, this large, awkward, inexplicable thing, and put it on the top shelf of her closet. It sat there for the rest of the semester and through all the years that came after, through the move back home, Through jobs and loss and marriage and 3 daughters born at once on a rainy April morning who came into the world loud and certain and looking for something to hold on to. Through all of it, the basketball stayed on the top shelf. In 2001, Selena was sitting at her kitchen table early in the morning while the girls slept upstairs. She was reading a magazine when a sentence stopped her so completely that she forgot she was holding a cup of coffee. A journalist had asked Michael Jordan if there was a single moment that changed everything for him. He had paused a long time before answering. Then he said that in his freshman year at UNC, he had been close to calling his mother and asking to come home. He had been that scared. And then he had found an anonymous letter under the bleachers at Carmichael Arena that said things he needed to hear from someone who had no reason to say them. He had kept that letter in his wallet for 6 years. He never found out who wrote it. Celine Voss set her coffee cup down on the table. She did not move for a very long time. She could hear Wren stirring upstairs, always Wren first, and then Odette's voice, and Sable's low, steady murmur. In a few minutes, they would come downstairs and want breakfast, and the morning would begin the way mornings always did, full and forward-moving, with no room to stand still inside them. Celine looked at her hands. She had written that letter. She had written it to nobody, left it under bleachers in an empty arena for a person she would never know, because it had seemed like the right thing to do in a moment when she was lonely and young and still believed that small kindnesses could travel further than you could see. She had not known she was writing to him. She sat with that the way she sat with most hard things, quietly, completely, alone, until she heard small feet on the stairs. Then she got up. "Breakfast," she called. "Come on." And the morning began, as it always does, as it always will, without asking if you are ready, without waiting for you to finish the enormous thing sitting in your chest. The sun came through the kitchen window. The toast came up. The orange juice was poured. 3 small voices filled the room, the way 3 small voices always filled every room they entered, completely without remainder. Celine Voss put the magazine in the drawer beneath the coffee maker. She did not take it out again. But that night, after the girls were asleep, and the house had gone quiet in the way that only houses with children in them go quiet, suddenly, totally like a switch, she sat down at the kitchen table with a pen and a piece of paper, and she began to write. Not a note this time, not something short and unsigned, slipped under bleachers for a stranger. A letter. 4 pages. Her full name at the bottom. She wrote it to a man she had never spoken to, about a thing she had kept for 18 years. She wrote carefully in the same handwriting she used when something mattered. She did not rush it. She crossed out 2 sentences and rewrote them. She went through 1 pen entirely and had to get another from the junk drawer. When she was done, she folded the pages, sealed them inside a plain white envelope, and held it in her hands for a while. Then she put it in the shoebox on the top shelf of her closet, behind the basketball. She pressed it flat against the cardboard bottom and put the basketball back in front of it, and she closed the shoebox, and she put the shoebox back on the shelf. She stood in the dark closet for a moment. Then she went to bed. 18 months later, Celine Voss was gone. 3 weeks after the afternoon at Birchwood and Bloom, a letter arrived at Michael Jordan's foundation office in Chicago. It had been forwarded 3 times, first from the foundation's main address to the administrative building, then to the assistant's floor, then finally to the desk of Ray Hollis, who had worked for Michael for 11 years and who had the particular talent of knowing, before she opened anything, whether it was the kind of thing he needed to see himself. She looked at the envelope for a long time. The return address was handwritten from a neighborhood on the northwest side of the city. The name above the address said D. Voss. She put it on his desk with nothing else on top of it. Michael found it at the end of a long day. He picked it up. He read the return address. He sat down slowly in his chair the way people sit when their legs have decided something before their brain has caught up. Inside was a note from Dottie. 2 short paragraphs written in the upright, unhurried hand of a woman who had learned long ago that words should only be used when they were necessary. She wrote that she had found the enclosed envelope while going through Celine's things. Finally, 6 months after her daughter's death, when she had found the courage to open the closet all the way. It had been in a shoebox behind a basketball. There was a sticky note on top of it in Celine's handwriting that said, "If you ever figure out who this belongs to, give it to him. I never had the courage." Dottie wrote that, after the afternoon at the tea shop, she thought she understood who it belonged to. She wrote one more line. She was a good woman. "I thought you should know that, from someone who knew her all her life." Michael set Dottie's note down on the desk. He picked up the second envelope, the one Celine had sealed. Plain white, slightly soft at the corners from years inside a shoebox. His name was not on it. Nothing was on it. It was just an envelope, the way a held breath is just air. He opened it. 4 pages, handwritten, dated 18 months before she died. He read slowly. The office around him, the hum of the building, the distant sound of traffic 20 floors below, went somewhere far away and stayed there. Celine wrote that she was the one who had left the note under the bleachers in October of 1983. She wrote that she had not known whose note she was answering. She had only known that someone had pressed a fear into paper and left it where it might be found, and that this was a thing she understood. She wrote that the basketball appearing in her seat 2 weeks later told her it had been found. She wrote that she kept it not as a prize, but as proof that small things can travel in ways you never see, that a letter written to nobody in particular can land somewhere that matters. She wrote that she had followed his career the way you follow someone you once told the truth to. Not like a fan, like a witness. She wrote that every time she saw him refuse to quit, in the hard seasons, in the years when everything was heavy and the whole world was watching, she thought, "I wrote to that person once. I saw him before the world did." She wrote that this was the quietest pride she had ever felt and the most real. She wrote that she had never told him because she was afraid the story would sound small next to everything he had become, like a footnote trying to claim the book. She wrote that she was running out of time and she wanted him to know before she did. She wrote, "Being seen by a stranger is a gift. I hope your life has been full of people who sat still long enough to notice you. I hope you have been that for others too." Then, at the bottom of the last page, in slightly smaller letters, the way people write the things they are least sure they should say, "I have 3 daughters. They are exactly the kind of people who sit still and notice things. I don't know if you'll ever meet them, but if you do, please be kind. They've lost enough already." The letter ended there. Michael Jordan sat in his office on the 20th floor of a building in Chicago while the city moved below him the way it always moved, without pausing, without noticing, and he did not move for a very long time. He read it again. Then he opened his desk drawer. He took out a piece of paper. He found a pen, not the expensive one kept near the phone for signing things, but a plain black pen from the cup on the corner of the desk, the kind that required no ceremony. He set the paper flat in front of him, and he began to write by hand. He was not a fast writer. He never had been. At school, his teachers had marked him down for it. Too slow, too careful, pressing too hard on the pen, like the words might slide off the page if he didn't hold them down. He had never fixed that. Some things you stop trying to fix. He wrote to the girls, not to Dottie, though he would write to her too later. He wrote directly to Odette and Wren and Sable, 3 names across the top of the page, side by side, with enough space between them that each one had room to breathe. He did not write about basketball. He did not write about 1983 or the note or the arena or the long, strange thread that had connected him to their mother across 30 years without either of them knowing it was there. He wrote about sitting still. He wrote that their mother had once done something for a scared and lonely person who needed to hear the truth, and that the truth she told had traveled further than she could have imagined, and that this was the kind of person she must have been, someone whose kindness had range. He wrote that he hadn't known her, but that he had been shaped by her, the way rivers are shaped by rain that fell somewhere else entirely and found its way downhill. He wrote that they should be proud of her. He wrote that he had been glad to sit at the table with them. He did not mention coming back. He was not sure yet if that was his to offer. Some things need to be given carefully or not at all. He signed his name. He folded the letter, sealed it, and set it next to Celine's envelope on the desk. 2 letters, his and hers. 38 years apart, and sitting an inch from each other in the quiet of a 20th floor office while Chicago moved in the dark below. He turned off the desk lamp. He went home. 1 month later. A Tuesday. November again, the way November always comes back without apologizing for what it did last time. Michael arrived at Birchwood and Bloom before the shop opened. He waited outside under the overhang with his collar up while Petra unlocked the door. She looked at him. He looked at her. She stepped aside without saying anything, which was exactly right. He went to his table. He arranged 4 chairs around it before he sat down. Carefully, deliberately, with enough space between them that nobody would feel crowded. He sat in his usual chair. He looked at the 3 empty ones. He looked at the window. The rain was coming in long, slow lines, the same as before, like the rain had also decided to come back. He ordered his tea. He held it with both hands and waited. The bell above the door rang at 10:20. Dottie came in first, umbrella still broken, coat still the color of autumn leaves. Behind her, the 3 yellow raincoats filed through the door. Still 2 sizes too big, still dark at the shoulders, where the rain had already found them. Scuffed sneakers, brown braids, 3 pairs of the same wide, serious eyes sweeping the room the way they always did, taking inventory. Wren found him first. She raised one hand and waved with her whole arm, like she was flagging down something very far away. Michael raised his hand back. They came to the table. They sat, Odette in the middle, Wren on the left, Sable on the right, the same arrangement as before, settled and instinctive, like birds returning to a branch they had decided was theirs. Dottie took the chair by the window. She folded her broken umbrella across her lap and looked at Michael with those eyes that had seen enough to know the real thing, and she nodded once, and that was all the greeting either of them needed. Michael had ordered 5 hot chocolates before they arrived. Petra set them down without ceremony and moved away. Dottie looked at the cups. She looked at Michael. The corner of her mouth moved slightly in a direction that was not quite a smile, but lived in the same neighborhood. The first 20 minutes were easy the way good things are easy. Not simple, but natural, like breathing, like the particular looseness that comes when you are somewhere that already knows you. Wren told him everything that had happened in the past month. It was considerable. There had been a science fair, a broken bicycle, a substitute teacher who thought Napoleon was a dessert, and an incident involving Sable's lemon water, and a library book that Wren narrated with the energy of someone who had been waiting weeks for the right audience. Michael listened, actually listened, the way he had learned to listen at that table, with his whole self, not the part of himself that was already forming a response. Odette opened her notebook and showed him a new page, a blue whale rendered in careful pencil, every measurement noted in the margins in her small, precise handwriting. Below it she had written, "Largest animal ever known to exist. Heart the size of a small car. Can be heard from 1,000 miles away." Michael read it twice. He said, "That last part." Odette looked at him. He said, "That a heart can be heard from 1,000 miles away." Odette looked at her notebook. Then she looked back at him. She understood something. He could see it moving across her face, quietly, the way understanding always moved across Odette's face, like weather coming in from a long way off. She said, "My mom had a big heart." Michael said, "I know." The table was quiet for a moment, not an uncomfortable quiet. The kind of quiet that happens when something true has been said and everyone in earshot is giving it room. Then Wren said, "She wrote you a letter, didn't she?" Michael looked at her. Wren shrugged with the easy confidence of someone who pays attention to everything. "You have the same face our grandmother had when she found it in the closet." Michael reached into the inside pocket of his jacket. He placed a letter on the table. The envelope was addressed to all three of them, Odette, Wren, and Sable, in handwriting that was large and careful and pressed a little hard into the page, the way writing looks when someone is making sure it stays. He slid it toward the middle of the table. Sable picked it up. She read it with the stillness she brought to everything, not showing what moved inside her, but something moving nonetheless. Her breathing changed just slightly, the way breathing changes when a room you didn't know you'd been missing suddenly opens up in front of you. She passed it to Wren. Wren read with her whole body, leaning forward and then back, her fingers pressed flat on the table beside the page. She went very quiet in the way she only went quiet when something had reached the part of her that was deeper than words. She passed it to Odette. Odette read with her finger tracing each line, careful and slow, the way she read things she wanted to keep. When she reached the last line, her fingers stopped moving. She read it again. Then she closed the letter gently along its original folds and held it in both hands. Nobody spoke for a moment. Outside, the rain came down. A taxi moved through a puddle. Someone across the room laughed at something. The espresso machine hissed once and then went quiet. Then Wren looked up and said, "She knew you." Michael said, "She knew me before I knew myself. That's the best kind of knowing." Odette said, "She never told us." Michael said, "Some people carry their kindest things quietly. It doesn't make the kindness less real. It just means the person they were kind to carries it for them." Sable set the letter down on the table. She looked at Michael the way she had looked at him the first day, reading the small print, finding the underneath of things. She said, "We want you to have the basketball back." Michael shook his head. "It was hers. It should stay with you." Sable considered this fully, the way she considered everything, taking it apart, turning it over, examining each side before putting it back together. Then she nodded. Settled? Done. Odette had been writing in her notebook while they talked. She did this the way she breathed, continuously, without deciding to. Now she tore out the page and held it across the table to Michael. He took it. She had written in her small, careful hand, "My mom saved Michael Jordan." Below that, in slightly smaller letters, "And Michael Jordan saved our afternoon." Below that, smaller still, the way people write things they are not completely sure they should say, but are going to say anyway. "We think that's fair." Michael looked at the page for a long time. Then he laughed. The real one, the one that came from somewhere low and arrived without permission. The one that made two people at nearby tables turn and smile without knowing why. Near the end of the visit, as Dottie began the small practiced movements of a woman preparing to gather children and go, Wren looked at Michael with the directness she brought to every important question. "Will you come back?" she said. "To this table?" Michael looked at the 4 chairs around the table. He looked at the window. He looked at the empty chair that had held the ghost of his father for 11 years, and which held something else now. Something harder to name but easier to feel, something that did not need a name to be real. "I'll be here every Tuesday," he said. Wren nodded with the gravity of someone witnessing a contract being signed. "Good. Done. That is settled." Dottie stood. She buttoned her autumn coat. She looked at Michael with those eyes, the eyes of someone who had lived long enough to know that life occasionally, rarely, against considerable odds, gives you something you did not know to ask for. She said, "Celine was right about you. Michael said, "She was right about her daughters, too." Dottie did not cry. It was close. She straightened her coat, tucked her broken umbrella under her arm, and moved toward the door with the dignity she had walked in with and had never once set down. The girls filed after her. Wren waved from the doorway. Big, whole arm, the wave of someone who plans to come back. Odette gave her small, formal wave. Precise, sincere. Sable was last. She always was. She stopped at the edge of the door and turned back and looked at Michael one final time. She said, "My mom used to say you can love something you've never touched. You can miss someone you've never met." A pause. The rain came down. "I think she was talking about you." The bell above the door rang. The door swung closed. Michael Jordan sat alone at the table in Birchwood and Bloom on a Tuesday in November. 5 empty cups. 4 chairs, 3 of them pulled close, belonging. A torn notebook page in his hand with 3 lines written in a 9-year-old's careful script. He looked at the chair across from him. His father used to say that everyone needed one place where the walls didn't know your name. A place where you could just be a person. Just James in a chair talking about potholes. Michael looked at the 3 chairs beside his own. The walls of Birchwood and Bloom did not know his name, but the chairs did. He picked up his tea. He held it with both hands. And for the first time in a very long time, the quiet at his table did not feel like something missing. It felt like something full. And that is the story of the quietest table in Chicago. A man who just wanted to be alone. 3 little girls who needed someone to sit with. And a mother who had done something kind 30 years ago without ever knowing how far it would travel. Kindness does that sometimes. It moves in ways you cannot see. It lands in places you will never visit. It saves people you will never meet. Celine Voss knew that, and now, because of 3 little girls in yellow raincoats and a rainy Tuesday afternoon, Michael Jordan knows it too. Before you go, drop a comment below and tell me where you are watching from right now. It could be early morning with your coffee, late at night when the house is finally quiet, or somewhere in between. Wherever you are, I want to know. This community comes from every corner of the world, and that never stops amazing me. If this story moved you even a little, if it reminded you that small kindnesses matter, that sitting still for someone is one of the most powerful things you can do, please hit the like button right now. It takes 1 second, and it helps this story reach someone out there who might really need to hear it today. And if you believe that kindness deserves to travel as far as it possibly can, subscribe to this channel and bring someone else along with you. Every new person who joins this community is one more person who gets to be reminded that goodness is real and it is worth talking about. Now click on the video appearing on your screen right now. The next story is already waiting for you.